The DJ cranked up another cheesy wedding song, the dance floor a sweaty mess of swaying bodies. Sarah, radiant in her white dress, was laughing with my sister, oblivious to the bomb she'd just dropped. My blood ran cold. "Did you just say, Dad?" I croaked, the words catching in my throat. Sarah's smile faltered. "What? No," she said, her voice a touch too high. I meant to say." The crowd noise seemed to fade away, replaced by a dull roar in my ears. My gaze darted around the room, searching for some escape pod from this surreal moment. Everyone seemed happy, blissfully unaware of the darkness that threatened to consume me. "Sarah," I pressed, my voice low and dangerous. "What did you mean by Dad?" She met my gaze for a fleeting moment, a flicker of fear in her eyes betraying the carefully constructed facade. Then, her face hardened. "Nothing," she snapped. "You must have heard wrong. Come on, let's dance." She reached for my hand, but I recoiled. The warmth of her touch suddenly felt foreign, repulsive. "Dance?" I scoffed. "Not until you tell me what the hell that was about." The music seemed to screech to a halt, replaced by a collective gasp from the crowd. All eyes were on us now, the picture of perfect newlyweds crumbling before them. Sarah's cheeks flushed crimson. "This is ridiculous," she hissed. "We can talk about this later, in private." Later? How could I possibly wait later? The seed of doubt, once planted, was taking root, twisting and growing with each passing second. I wouldn't let her push this under the rug. Not anymore. "No," I said, my voice firmer than I expected. "We talk about it now. Right here, right now." The silence was deafening. Sarah's eyes darted around the room, desperate for an escape, for someone to intervene. But there was no escape. Not anymore. The truth, whatever it was about to come out. And a horrifying part of me, a part one didn't recognize, couldn't wait to hear it. The room held its breath, 1,000 eyes locked on Sarah and me. My heart pounded a frantic rhythm against my ribs, each beat echoing the growing storm of emotions inside me. "Dad?" I repeated, the word tasting like ash in my mouth. "You're saying?" Sarah's voice, when it finally came, was barely a whisper. "Yes," she confessed, her shoulders slumping in defeat. "It started at the reception." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. My own wedding reception? The very night I pledged my life to her, they were. A wave of nausea washed over me, threatening to spill over. "But why?" I managed to choke out, the question laced with disbelief and a raw, primal anger. Tears streamed down Sarah's face, carving tracks through her carefully applied makeup. I don't know," she stammered. He just touched me. And I didn't stop him." Disgust and fury twisted in my gut. Suddenly, all those little things I'd ignored over the years, the lingering glances between them, the hushed conversations, the way Dad would sometimes look at her with a possessiveness that made my skin crawl, all of it clicked into place. "Didn't stop him?" I echoed, my voice rising a notch. "How could you just let that happen?" "I was young," she pleaded. "And naive. It was just a moment of weakness." A moment of weakness? They continued this weakness for a year and a half. The betrayal was like a festering wound, raw and exposed. "A moment?" I scoffed. "You call an affair that lasted over a year a moment?" Sarah flinched at the harshness in my voice. "It wasn't planned," she mumbled. "It just happened." "But it stopped, right?" I pressed, desperate for some shred of normalcy, for some assurance that this wasn't a lifelong betrayal. Her silence was deafening. My gaze darted back to her face, the answer reflected in her tear-filled eyes. "It didn't, did it?" I whispered, the truth settling in my stomach like a cold stone. "It happened again, didn't it?" The air crackled with unspoken words. Each beat of silence echoed louder than the stunned gasps that had erupted moments before. My gaze flickered between Sarah's tear-streaked face and the gawking crowd, a surreal detachment washing over me. "It happened again," I finally said, my voice raspy. "When?" Sarah chewed her lip, tears glistening in her lashes. After Mom passed. "So for 2 years, you..." The words wouldn't form. 2 years of shared grief used as a twisted excuse for their betrayal. "It was a mistake," she mumbled, as if that could erase decades of lies. "A mistake?" I repeated, a hollow laugh escaping my lips. "This whole marriage seems to be one big mistake, doesn't it?" A sob escaped her lips, but I barely registered it. My mind was a chaotic storm, churning with questions and a growing sense of betrayal that gnawed at my insides. There's more, isn't there? I rasped, the words heavy with dread. Somehow, I already knew. Sarah's eyes widened in alarm. No, she choked out, a flicker of desperation in her gaze. There's nothing else. But the lie hung heavy in the air, thick and suffocating. Intuition, honed by years of ignoring small inconsistencies, screamed at me. Look at me, Sarah, I commanded, my voice low and dangerous. Tell me the truth, everything. A tremor ran through her, and she finally met my gaze. The fear in her eyes mirrored the icy knot forming in my stomach. It never really stopped, she confessed, her voice barely a whisper. We'd see each other occasionally for years. Years? The revelation punched the air out of my lungs. My entire married life, built on a foundation of sand, was crumbling around me. But, our kids, I stammered, a horrifying thought slithering into my mind. There weren't others, were there? Sarah's gaze flickered away for a fleeting moment, then she locked eyes with me, her expression unreadable. The silence stretched, each tick of the clock an eternity. There was one other time, she finally whispered, her voice barely audible. One other time? I echoed, the words devoid of meaning. When? Before we were married, Sarah mumbled, shame twisting her features. Just a one-night stand. One-night stand. Suddenly, everything, the lingering doubts about our early days, the whispers about her past, clicked into place. My world had been built on a lie that stretched back before our vows were even spoken. The wedding reception felt like a lifetime ago. Gone were the joyful speeches, the clinking of glasses, the carefree dancing. In their place, a suffocating silence hung heavy in the air, punctuated only by the occasional sniffle from Sarah and the hushed murmurs of the stunned crowd. I couldn't bear to look at them, the friends and family who'd witnessed the unraveling of my life. Shame burned in my gut, a searing counterpoint to the icy rage that gnawed at my insides. Sarah kept stealing glances at me, her face a mask of guilt and desperation. Every time I met her gaze, I saw not the woman I'd loved for nearly 4 decades, but a stranger who'd built our entire life on a foundation of lies. Days turned into a blur of strained silences and tearful apologies. Sarah tried to explain, to justify, but her words were meaningless noise compared to the deafening roar of betrayal in my head. The weight of this secret choked the air out of every room. Conversation, once filled with easy banter, became a minefield of unspoken accusations and simmering anger. How could we talk about the weather, the kids, anything normal, when the very foundation of our existence was rotten? The thought of telling the kids was like a physical blow. How could I break their world apart like this? They deserved better than this tangled web of deceit. Yet, the thought of keeping this secret, of pretending everything was normal, felt equally unbearable. The innocence of our 17 grandchildren mocked the darkness that now consumed me. Their laughter, once a source of joy, now echoed the hollowness within me. Sleep offered no escape. Nightmares, vivid and relentless, replayed the scenes of their betrayal, twisting the knife deeper in my gut. The house, once a haven of shared memories, became a suffocating prison. Every corner held a ghost of a happy moment, now tainted by the knowledge of their lies. The furniture, the pictures, even the worn carpet, everything felt like a lie. One evening, I couldn't take it anymore. The silence pressed in on me like a physical force. I needed to get out, to escape the suffocating atmosphere of our shared betrayal. I'm going for a walk, I announced to Sarah, my voice raspy. She looked up, startled, a flicker of hope flitting across her face. Do you want me to come? The question pushed me over the edge. No, I snapped. I need some time alone. Her hope flickered and died, replaced by a flicker of something that might have been fear. I didn't care. All I wanted was to escape this web of lies, to breathe air that wasn't choked with deceit. Stepping out into the cool night air, I slammed the door behind me with a force that rattled the windows. It wasn't enough. The anger, the hurt, it all boiled over, threatening to consume me. I needed answers, needed them bad, and maybe, just maybe, there was someone who could give them to me. Someone who'd known all along. Rain lashed against the windshield as I drove aimlessly, the wipers struggling to keep pace with the downpour. My mind was a churning storm, replaying memories in a relentless loop. Every happy moment from our marriage was now tainted, poisoned by the knowledge of their betrayal. Back at the house, Sarah had watched me leave with a mixture of fear and something else I couldn't quite decipher. Maybe desperation? Pity? It didn't matter. Right now, all I craved was the truth, some shred of understanding in this chaotic mess. My gaze drifted to the rearview mirror, catching a glimpse of a familiar building, the retirement home where my dad spent his final years. A jolt shot through me. A memory, long buried, surfaced from the murky depths of my mind. Years ago, after a particularly heated argument with my father, a bitter accusation had slipped from my lips. "Leave her alone," I'd yelled, the words fueled by a potent mix of anger and a strange, unexplainable jealousy. My father's reaction had been odd. A flicker of something akin to panic crossed his face before he dismissed my outburst with a forced laugh. Now, with the weight of Sarah's confession heavy on my chest, the memory took on a sinister new light. Had it been about Sarah? Was my gut feeling all those years ago more than just youthful suspicion? Another memory flickered. My mother, a worried crease between her brows, once mentioned catching Dad acting strangely around Sarah. Had she suspected something too? The thought gnawed at me. Desperate for any shred of evidence, for confirmation of my growing suspicions, I knew what I had to do. Returning home, the house felt colder, more oppressive than ever. Ignoring Sarah's questioning glance, I made a beeline for the attic, a dusty repository of our past. Boxes piled high, overflowing with forgotten treasures and faded memories. Hours bled into one another as I sifted through old photo albums, love letters, birthday cards. Anything that might hold a clue, a whisper of the truth. Disappointment gnawed at me. Just as I was about to give up, a forgotten photo album slipped from a dusty stack, scattering its contents across the floor. My heart lurched as a crumpled piece of paper fluttered to my feet. It was a love note, the faded ink barely discernible. But the elegant handwriting, the endearments whispered on the page, there was no mistaking it. It was Sarah's, and it was addressed to Dad. The confirmation hit me like a physical blow. The air grew thin, the room closing in around me. This wasn't just an affair. It was a full-blown love story playing out under my very nose, hidden in plain sight for decades. Rage, hot and blinding, surged through me. Tears welled in my eyes, blurring the incriminating note. Years of betrayal, a lifetime of lies, all laid bare on this single sheet of paper. With a trembling hand, I pocketed the note, the weight of it a tangible symbol of their deceit. I needed air, space to process this shattering discovery. My gaze fell on the stairs, leading down to where Sarah sat, oblivious to the truth I now held. The confrontation, I knew, was inevitable. And this time, I wouldn't hold back. The truth, however ugly, would finally be laid bare. The crumpled love note felt heavy in my pocket, a constant reminder of the betrayal that poisoned my life. Sleep was a stranger, replaced by restless nights fueled by anger and a gnawing sense of injustice. The house, once a haven, felt like a tomb. Every corner echoed with memories, both happy and painful, now tainted by the knowledge of their lies. The silence was deafening, punctuated only by the phantom echoes of laughter and everyday conversations. Even the furniture, the worn rug where the kids used to play, everything seemed to mock me with its normalcy. The lawyer's office was sterile and impersonal, the air thick with the weight of legalese and broken dreams. Divorce. The word hung heavy in the air, a concrete symbol of the fractured remains of my life. Alimony, child support, asset division. The financial implications were daunting, another layer of stress heaped upon the mountain of emotional turmoil. But money was a distant concern right now. All I wanted was the truth, a full accounting of their years-long deceit. And maybe, just maybe, a shred of justice. The days blurred together in a haze of grief and anger. Social gatherings became an unbearable ordeal. Facing friends and acquaintances, pretending everything was normal, felt like a betrayal itself. The forced smiles, the awkward silences, it was all too much to bear. Isolation became my only solace. Yet, the silence was deafening, the solitude suffocating. I knew I needed help, someone to talk to unload the crushing weight of this burden. Reaching out to John, my oldest friend, felt like a lifeline thrown across a vast ocean of despair. He listened patiently, his gruff exterior belying a well of empathy. The words tumbled out, a torrent of pain and anger that I hadn't even realized I was holding back. John's anger, when it came, surprised me. "That lying snake," he roared, his voice thick with fury. "You deserve better, Mark. Far better." His anger, unexpected and fierce, kindled a spark of hope within me. Maybe I wasn't alone in this. Maybe there was still something left to salvage from the wreckage of my life. Slowly, tentatively, I began to reach out. A call to my sister, a coffee date with an old college buddy. Each connection, however fleeting, felt like a lifeline thrown across the abyss. And to my surprise, support emerged from unexpected corners. Friends I hadn't spoken to in years offered a listening ear, old colleagues reached out with words of encouragement. Even Sarah's sister, tears glistening in her eyes, confessed she'd always suspected something was amiss. The road ahead was long and uncertain, but for the first time since Sarah's confession, a flicker of hope flickered in my chest. Maybe, just maybe, I could weather this storm. Maybe, just maybe, I could rebuild my life, piece by broken piece. The silence at the dinner table was deafening. My gaze bounced between my two grown children, their faces etched with a mixture of sadness and confusion. The news of the divorce had hit them hard, forcing them to choose sides in a battle they never asked to be in. So, it's true? Sarah finally broke the silence, her voice tight with emotion. Dad's the reason? I swallowed the lump in my throat, the crumpled love note burning a hole in my pocket. Yes, I rasped. There's no easy way to say this, but it's been going on for years. The revelation hung heavy in the air, a bomb detonated in the carefully constructed facade of our family life. My son, ever the pragmatist, cleared his throat. How long? He asked, his voice flat. Years, I repeated, the weight of the betrayal pressing down on me. But how could you not know? My daughter choked out, tears welling in her eyes. Shame washed over me. The signs, I realized with a sickening clarity, had always been there. The lingering glances, the hushed conversations, the way Dad would sometimes look at Sarah with an intensity that made my skin crawl. I'd willfully ignored them, dismissed them as nothing. Now, the truth slapped me in the face, a bitter fruit of my own denial. The weeks that followed were a blur of legal wrangling and emotional turmoil. Sarah's lawyers, predictably, painted a different picture, portraying me as the cold, distant husband while casting her as the victim. The truth, as always, was a messy labyrinth. As the financial realities of the separation sunk in, the stress intensified. Adjusting to a new, smaller living space and a significantly reduced income was a challenge. But the emotional toll was far greater. Slowly, though, whispers began to reach me. Old friends, former colleagues, they all harbored suspicions about Sarah and Dad's relationship. Their stories, fragments of a larger truth, painted a picture of a betrayal that stretched back even further than I originally thought. The web of deceit, it seemed, ran deeper than I could have imagined. Spending time with the grandkids, however, became a source of solace in this storm. Their innocent laughter, their unfiltered affection, it was a reminder of the good in the world, a reason to keep moving forward. One afternoon, driven by a deep, primal need for closure, I found myself standing at my father's grave. The wind rustled through the leaves, a mournful echo of the anger that churned within me. "You bastard," I choked out, the words scraping raw against my throat. "You stole not just my wife, but years of my life. Years I can't get back." Tears streamed down my face, a torrent of long-suppressed grief and rage finally finding release. There would be no apology, no explanation, just this raw, primal scream into the indifferent wind. Healing wasn't a linear path. There were good days and bad, moments of anger and despair followed by fleeting glimpses of hope. Small victories, a new haircut, a renewed gym membership, felt like giant leaps forward. Letting go of the anger and resentment toward Sarah was a crucial step. Forgiveness, I realized, wasn't about condoning her actions, but about freeing myself from the poisonous grip of the past. Filling the void left by the shattered relationship, I explored new hobbies and interests. Photography, cooking classes, volunteering at the local animal shelter. Each new pursuit chipped away at the emptiness, reminding me that there was a life beyond the wreckage of my marriage. The thought of dating again was both intimidating and oddly intriguing. Was I ready to open myself up to new possibilities? The answer, for now, remained shrouded in uncertainty. Forgiving the children, understanding that they were caught in the crossfire, allowed for a tentative mending of broken relationships. Holidays and family gatherings took on a new, more informal form as we navigated the new family dynamic. Then, one rainy afternoon, a chance encounter at the local bookstore turned my world upside down. There, standing in the fiction aisle, was Emily, a flame from my college days. The spark, rekindled after all these years, was undeniable. Could this be a new beginning? The future, once shrouded in uncertainty, now held a glimmer of hope. It may not be what I envisioned, but it held the potential for happiness, for a life filled with love and laughter. And that, I realized, was all I could